I'd been running an Airbnb property in upstate New York for about 4 years. A cozy little cabin nestled in the Adirondacks. Perfect for hikers, skiers, and anyone looking to escape the city grind. It wasn't my main gig. I worked remotely as a graphic designer out of Albany, but the extra income from the cabin was too good to pass up. My girlfriend Claire and I had poured our hearts into fixing it up. New hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, even a hot tub out back. We figured it'd be a gold mine during the fall foliage season and winter snowstorms, and for a while it was. Guests loved it. The reviews were glowing, and the bookings kept rolling in. But man, the upkeep was brutal. Coordinating cleaners, fixing random stuff that broke, and dealing with the occasional entitled guest who'd trash the place and demand a refund. It wore me down, but I stuck with it because the money was worth it. The way it worked was pretty hands-off. Guests would book through the app, I'd send them a key code for the smart lock, and that was that. I lived about 45 minutes away, so I almost never met them in person unless something went wrong. Most of the time, they'd text me when they arrived, maybe ask where the Wi-Fi router was or how to work the thermostat, and then text again when they checked out. Easy. Claire handled the messaging half the time. She's better at the polite customer service voice than I am, but I was the one who'd drive up if there was a real problem. And for 3 years, nothing too crazy happened. A busted window from a storm, a raccoon that got in through the chimney once. Normal stuff, until last December. It was a freezing Saturday night, one of those nights where the wind howls through the trees and you can feel the chill even through 3 layers of clothes. I just finished a late dinner, leftover pizza and a beer, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a guy named Mark, who'd booked the cabin for the weekend with his wife for what he called a quiet getaway. The message was short. "Hey, the heat's out. Can you call me?" My stomach sank. No heat in a cabin at 15 degrees Fahrenheit with snow piling up outside. That's a nightmare. I apologized in a quick reply and dialed him up, already dreading the drive. He picked up on the second ring, sounding calm but annoyed. "Yeah, man, it's freezing in here. The heater's dead, and we've been trying to figure it out for an hour. Can you come take a look?" I told him I'd be there as soon as I could, threw on my coat, grabbed my toolbox, and headed out into the night. The drive up was brutal. Icy roads, pitch black except for my headlights, and the occasional deer darting across the highway. I kept thinking about how weird it was that the heater would just die. I'd had it serviced in the fall, and it was a solid unit, one of those modern gas furnaces built for harsh winters. Maybe a power surge from the storm knocked it out, or they'd messed with it somehow. Mark had seemed nice enough on the phone, though. Mid-30s, I guessed, with a slight Midwestern accent. I pictured him and his wife huddled under blankets, cursing me out for ruining their romantic weekend. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway, around 10:30 p.m., I was exhausted but determined to fix this fast and get home. The cabin looked normal from the outside. Lights on in the living room, a faint glow behind the curtains, smoke curling up from the chimney. But I noticed 3 cars parked out front. 3. That threw me off. Mark had booked for 2 people, and who needs 3 cars for a weekend trip? Maybe they'd brought a friend last minute, I thought, though the listing clearly said no extra guests without approval. I shrugged it off. People bend the rules all the time, and grabbed my stuff. I texted Mark to let him know I was there, then punched in the key code and stepped inside. The place was dead silent. No "hey, thanks for coming," or footsteps rushing to greet me, just the faint crackle of the fireplace. The air was cold, though, way colder than it should have been with a fire going. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the wooden walls. Nothing. I glanced around. Coats on the rack, a couple of empty coffee mugs on the table, signs someone had been there, but no people. My gut started to twist. I should have waited for them to show themselves, but I was tired and just wanted to get the heat back on. So I headed straight for the utility closet where the furnace was. The closet was off the kitchen, a cramped little space with exposed pipes and a flickering bulb overhead. I set my toolbox down and popped the furnace panel open. Everything looked fine. No blown fuses, no obvious leaks. I flipped the power switch off and on, and the thing hummed to life like nothing had ever been wrong. Warm air started blowing through the vents almost immediately. I stood there confused as hell. Had they just not known how to reset it? Why call me out here for that? I closed the panel and stepped back into the kitchen. Сирения готова найти Марка и спросить, что было дело. That's when I heard the front door creak open, followed by heavy boots on the hardwood floor. My heart jumped. I hadn't locked the door behind me, assuming they were already inside. Mark, I called, stepping toward the living room. 3 guys walked in, all bundled up in dark jackets and beanies, their faces half hidden in shadow. You fix it? One of them said, his voice rougher than the guy I talked to on the phone. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with a scruffy beard poking out from under his hood. The other 2 just stood there, hands in their pockets, watching me. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. It's working now. Must have just needed a reset. You guys okay up here? They didn't answer right away. The tall one tilted his head, like he was sizing me up, and the other 2 shifted closer to the doorway, blocking the path back to the front. Good, he finally grunted. Appreciate it. But they didn't move. My eyes darted to the tallest guy's waistband. Something bulky was tucked under his jacket, and when he turned slightly, I caught the glint of metal. A gun. My mouth went dry. All right, well, if that's it, I'll head out, I said, forcing a smile and stepping toward the door. They didn't budge at first, just stared at me with these cold, empty looks. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. Let me know if anything else comes up, I added, squeezing past the guy nearest the door. He stepped aside at the last second, and I bolted outside, not looking back until I was in my truck. I locked the doors, started the engine, and peeled out of there, half expecting them to follow me. They didn't. When I got home, Claire was still up, scrolling on her phone in bed. I told her everything. The weird call, the 3 cars, the gun, and she went pale. You need to call the cops, she said, grabbing my arm. I didn't want to at first, maybe I was overreacting, but she wouldn't let it go. So I dialed the non-emergency line and explained the situation. An officer drove up to the cabin about an hour later and called me back. Place is empty, he said. No cars, no people. Looks like they took off. You want to come check for damage? I gave him the key code instead. I wasn't going back that night. The next morning, I drove up with Claire to see what was left. The mugs were still on the table, but half the kitchen appliances were gone. The toaster, the coffee maker, even the damn microwave. A couple of framed prints I'd hung on the walls were missing too. Then the real kicker. Airbnb flagged the booking. Mark's payment had bounced, tied to a stolen credit card. The cops figured it was a scam crew, maybe planning to rob me or shake me down for cash when I showed up. The heater thing was just bait to get me there. Why they didn't pull the trigger, figuratively or literally, I'll never know. Maybe I got lucky, or maybe they didn't think I was worth the hassle. After that, I installed security cameras and a deadbolt that couldn't be bypassed with a code. But the whole thing rattled me bad. Claire and I argued about it for weeks. She wanted to sell the place, but I didn't want to give up the income. We compromised by hiring a property manager so I wouldn't have to deal with guests directly anymore. Still, every time my phone buzzes late at night, I get this sinking feeling it's another emergency call from the cabin. I don't know who those guys were or what they really wanted, but I'm damn sure I never want to find out. I'd been itching for a solo getaway for months. Life in Chicago had been suffocating. Endless Zoom calls for my marketing job, a cramped apartment with a roommate who never cleaned, and the constant hum of city noise that never let me think straight. I'd traveled with friends or family before, but this time I wanted something just for me, a chance to recharge, maybe crack open a book I'd been meaning to read, or just stare at nothing for a while. So last summer, I booked a week-long trip to a little Airbnb cabin in the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. It was my first time going solo, and I was pumped. The idea of wide-open forests, no traffic, and total silence, that was my kind of heaven. I did my research. Hotels were fine, but Airbnbs in the area were cheaper and way more charming. I found this perfect spot about 20 miles outside Gatlinburg, a one-bedroom A-frame with a wraparound porch, big windows, and reviews raving about the peaceful seclusion. It was a bit of a haul from town, but I'd rented a car, so I didn't care. I just wanted to be away from people. The host, a guy named Tom, seemed legit. Quick replies, clear instructions, the works. He sent me the key code a day before I left, and by the time I hit the road, I was practically counting the minutes until I could kick back. The drive down was long, 8 hours with a couple of gas station stops and a playlist of indie rock to keep me sane. I pulled up to the cabin just as the sun was dipping below the trees around 6:30 p.m. It was exactly like the photos. Cedar siding, a sloped roof, and a porch swing creaking in the breeze. The air smelled like pine and earth, a million miles from the exhaust fumes I was used to. I punched in the code, dragged my duffel bag and cooler inside, and took a quick look around. The place was spotless. Wood-paneled walls, a plush sofa, a little kitchen with a coffee maker I'd definitely be using. There was even a stack of firewood by the hearth. I texted Tom, "Made it, looks great," and he replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Done deal. I was wiped from the drive, so my plan was simple. Unpack, make a sandwich, and crash on the sofa with the TV on. I flipped on a random sitcom, ate my turkey and cheese, and let the hum of canned laughter lull me to sleep. It was maybe 8 p.m., early, but I didn't care. I figured I'd wake up later and stumble to the bedroom. Sure enough, around 11:30, my eyes popped open. The TV was still blaring some infomercial about a miracle mop. I fumbled for the remote, shut it off, and stretched, my neck stiff from the weird angle I'd passed out in. The cabin was dark now, just the faint glow of moonlight slipping through the windows. I stood up to head for bed, but as I shuffled toward the kitchen for a glass of water, something stopped me cold. A gust of wind hit my face, sharp, damp, and smelling like wet leaves. I turned toward the big window by the front door, the one that stretched floor to ceiling with a killer view of the woods. It was wide open, not cracked, fully slid open, the screen pushed aside, letting the night spill in. My heart slammed against my ribs. I checked every door and window when I got there, force of habit from living in a sketchy neighborhood back home. That window had been locked, I was sure of it. I stood there staring, my brain scrambling for an explanation. Maybe the latch was loose. Maybe I'd missed it. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I crept over, my socks silent on the wood floor, and peeked outside. The porch was empty, just shadows swaying with the trees. No cars, no lights, nothing but the rustle of leaves. I slid the window shut, locked it tight, and double-checked the front door. Still bolted. My hands were shaking a little as I grabbed my phone and a steak knife from the kitchen drawer. I'm not some tough guy. I'm 5'11", decent shape from jogging, but I'm no fighter. Still, if someone was messing with me, I wasn't going down without swinging. I did a full sweep of the cabin, bedroom, bathroom, even the tiny loft upstairs. Empty. No footprints, no mess, nothing out of place except that damn window. I texted Tom, "Hey, did anyone stop by tonight? Just woke up and the living room window was open." It was late, so I didn't expect an answer, but I needed to rule him out. I sat on the sofa, knife in hand, listening to every creak and groan of the cabin settling. The rational part of me said it was nothing, a fluke, a glitch. But the part that grew up watching horror movies was screaming that I wasn't alone. I locked the bedroom door that night and barely slept, jolting awake at every sound. By morning, I was a wreck, but the sun streaming in made me feel stupid for freaking out. Tom replied around 8 a.m. "No one should have been there. That's weird. Everything okay?" I told him, "Yeah, just checking," and tried to shake it off. I even laughed at myself a little, chalking it up to travel stress. That night, I decided to stay up later, watch a movie, keep the lights on, prove I wasn't scared of my own shadow. I was halfway through some dumb action flick when it happened again. Not the window this time, the back door. I'd locked it myself, checked it twice, but when I walked past the kitchen to grab a beer, there it was, ajar, just enough for a sliver of darkness to peek through. My stomach dropped. I froze, listening, and that's when I heard it. A faint crunch, like boots on gravel, right outside. I grabbed my phone and the knife again, my hands slick with sweat, and tiptoed to the door. I slammed it shut, threw the deadbolt, and dialed 911, whispering to the operator that someone was outside my Airbnb. The cops took 20 minutes to get there. Felt like forever. I hid in the bedroom, lights off, peeking through the blinds. I didn't see anyone, but I swear I heard that crunching again, farther off, like someone retreating into the woods. When the officers arrived, 2 of them, flashlights blazing, they searched the property. Nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt, no signs of a break-in, just me looking like a paranoid city kid. They were nice about it, said it could have been an animal or the wind, but I could tell they thought I was overreacting. I didn't care. I checked out the next morning, booked a cheap motel in Gatlinburg, and spent the rest of my trip sleeping with the TV on and every light blazing. Tom refunded me without a fight. He called later, sounding genuinely freaked out. "I've never had anything like that happen," he said. "I'm heading up there tomorrow to install some cameras." He swore he hadn't been anywhere near the place. He lived an hour away and had an alibi from his wife. The cops didn't find anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me. The worst part? When I got home and unpacked, I found a scrap of paper in my duffel bag that hadn't been there before, just a torn corner with "nice view" scrawled in messy handwriting. I don't know how it got there, or who left it. Maybe it was a prank, maybe it was nothing, but it's been months and I still can't sleep without checking every window twice. Solo trips? Yeah, I'm done with those, and Airbnb's off my list for good. Last spring, I decided to treat myself to a long weekend away. I just finished a brutal semester at college in Boston, exams, group projects, the works, and I needed a break before diving into my summer internship. I'd always wanted to visit the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. All those Instagram posts of vineyards and glassy water had me hooked. My plan was simple: a few days to unwind, sip some local wine, and maybe kayak if I felt ambitious. I wasn't traveling far, just a couple hours drive, so I figured I'd stop halfway for a night to break up the trip. Hotels felt too sterile, so I scrolled through Airbnb and found a cute lakeside cottage near Seneca Lake. It was a 2-bedroom spot, perfect for one person, with a dock out back and a fire pit. The reviews called it cozy and quiet, which was exactly what I wanted. I'm a 20-year-old girl, pretty petite, and yeah, I'll admit I'm not the bravest when it comes to strangers or creepy situations. I grew up in the suburbs where the scariest thing was a raccoon knocking over the trash. But I'd stayed at Airbnbs before with friends, and this was my first time solo. I wasn't too worried. The host, a woman named Ellen, had a 5-star rating and sent me a friendly welcome message with the key code and a tip about the best bakery in town. I packed my car with a suitcase, some snacks, and my laptop for Netflix, and hit the road around noon on a Friday. The drive was gorgeous, rolling hills, patches of forest, and that crisp spring air you can't get in the city. I got to the cottage around 5 p.m., just as the sky was turning golden. It was even better than the pictures. White clapboard siding, a sloping lawn down to the water, and a little porch with Adirondack chairs. I let myself in with the code, dropped my stuff by the door, and did a quick tour. The living room had a big sectional sofa and a view of the lake. The kitchen was stocked with basics, and the bedrooms upstairs smelled like fresh linen. I texted Ellen, "Got here, love it," and she replied, "Enjoy," with a smiley face. I felt like I'd scored the perfect hideaway. I spent the evening settling in, made a quick pasta dinner, poured a glass of the cheap wine I'd brought, and curled up on the sofa with a rom-com. It was a one-night stopover, so I didn't unpack much. Just kept my suitcase by the stairs. By 9 p.m., I was dozing off, the movie still playing softly in the background. That's when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the front door, loud enough to snap me awake. My heart jumped. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was pitch black outside, just the faint shimmer of the lake through the windows. I muted the TV and sat there frozen, hoping it was a mistake. Another knock, harder this time. "Hello?" A guy's voice called out, muffled through the wood. "We're here for the rental." I frowned, my stomach twisting. Rental? What was he talking about? I grabbed my phone, my hands shaky, and tiptoed to the door. It had a basic lock, no chain or peephole, which suddenly felt like a huge oversight. I didn't want to open it. I mean, who shows up at a stranger's Airbnb at night? So I raised my voice and shouted back, "Who are you? I booked this place." There was a pause, then the same voice. There must be a mix-up. We reserved it for tonight. Can you let us in so we can figure this out?" I heard another voice muttering something low, too quiet to make out. My mind raced. Maybe it was a glitch, a double booking, but something felt off. I pulled up the Airbnb app, my fingers fumbling, and checked my reservation. Confirmed, paid, no issues. "No!" I yelled back. "I'm here already. You need to call the host." The muttering got louder and I caught a snippet. "Just get her to open it." Before footsteps shuffled away from the door, I backed up, my breath shallow, and peeked through the blinds on the living room window. 2 guys stood on the porch, one in a hoodie, the other in a baseball cap, gesturing toward the driveway. My car was parked there, the only one, so they knew I was alone. Then I saw it. Farther down the lawn, near the tree line, 3 more figures lurking in the shadows. One had a scarf pulled up over his face. Another was holding something long, maybe a crowbar. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a mix-up. This was a setup. I bolted upstairs to the bedroom, locked the door, and dialed 911, whispering to the operator that a group of guys was trying to get into my Airbnb. "Stay calm, stay quiet," she said. "We've got a unit 5 minutes out." 5 minutes felt like forever. I crouched by the bed, clutching my phone, and listened as footsteps circled the house, crunching on gravel, thumping against the porch. Then came the worst sound, a loud bang against the back door, followed by splintering wood. They were breaking in. I stuffed my fist in my mouth to keep from screaming, tears streaming down my face as I heard boots stomping inside. They moved fast, drawers slamming, cabinets banging open. I could hear them downstairs, voices barking orders. "Check the bag! Take the TV!" One of them pounded up the stairs and I shrank back as the bedroom doorknob rattled. "Someone's in here!" a guy shouted, his voice rough and angry. The door shook under a hard kick. but the lock held. I prayed they'd give up. Then faintly, sirens wailed in the distance. "Cops!" someone yelled, and the chaos erupted. Footsteps scrambling, stuff crashing to the floor. By the time the police burst in, they were gone. The cops found me still huddled in the bedroom, shaking like a leaf. They searched the place. My suitcase was ripped open, laptop gone, car keys missing. Outside, my car's tires were slashed, and the back door was hanging off its hinges. An officer sat me down with a blanket and a cup of coffee from their thermos. "We've seen this before," he said. "Crews hitting vacation rentals around the lakes. They scope out solo travelers, pretend it's a booking mistake to get in, then rob the place blind." He figured they'd been watching the cottage waiting for me to settle in. The thought made my skin crawl. How long had they been out there? Ellen called me the next morning, horrified. She swore she hadn't double booked and offered a full refund, plus money for the damages. The cops recovered my car keys a mile down the road, but the laptop and my sense of safety were long gone. I cut my trip short, drove back to Boston with a rental car, and spent the next week jumping at every noise in my apartment. I still love the idea of a quiet getaway, but now I triple-check locks, read every review like a detective, and stick to crowded hotels. That night by the lake taught me something. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's in the woods. It's what's pretending to knock politely at your door.